The autumn wind cut through the small town of Willow Creek as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked sidewalks. The once vibrant leaves had withered, clinging desperately to their branches just as the town's inhabitants clung to the remnants of their own stories. Emma Brooks stood by the edge of her modest front yard staring out at the river that snaked lazily through the landscape. It had been a long, quiet day like so many others in this sleepy little village where time seemed to stand still. She was crouched down, rinsing out clothes in a weathered basin. The faint smell of soap mingled with the earthy scent of damp soil. Her hands moved in practiced motions, scrubbing with a rhythm that could have been mistaken for mechanical, each stroke a small act of labor, but one that had become her daily routine. The sudden shout broke the monotony, tearing through the air like a jagged knife. "Emma, Tom's fallen into the river!" Martha, the neighbor from down the street, stood by her gate, arms flailing in panic, her face twisted in shock. "Quick, hurry, you have to save him." Emma didn't even flinch. Her eyes didn't leave the laundry, her fingers continued to work, despite the growing tension in the air around her. "Well, if he fell, he fell," Emma muttered, her voice flat. "Not like I can swim." The statement hung in the air like a curse. A deep silence settled over the street as every set of eyes turned toward her, disbelief painted on their faces. Martha's mouth opened and closed as though words were failing her. The rest of the neighbors stood frozen, their hands still, the murmurs of disbelief rolling through the crowd like a tide, but none of them dared to take action. Emma's expression remained unchanged even as she could hear the splash of water in the distance, the sound of struggling and the faint shouts of panic. Her mind, however, was far from the chaos unraveling just a few feet away. The sun was low now, casting an orange glow across the river, and Emma's thoughts were drifting distant, numb. A few seconds passed. Then Martha's voice broke through the silence again, louder this time, desperate. "Emma! Are you crazy? That's your husband. He's drowning." Emma slowly stood up, brushing the water from her hands, still not sparing a glance at Tom or the frantic scene unfolding behind her. "He's not my husband," Emma said coolly, her voice steady. "That's Tom Miller, and he's been gone for a long time now." Martha stared at her, eyes wide, mouth agape. "What do you mean, he's not your husband? You've been married for years?" Emma turned slightly to glance at the figure struggling in the river. Her gaze was emotionless, distant. "I said he's not my husband." Emma repeated, her voice sharp, like cutting through the air. She returned to her task without another word. Martha's face was a picture of disbelief. "Emma, you can't just stand there and watch him drown?" Emma did not look at her. She didn't look at anyone. Her hands kept moving, scrubbing the fabric, each motion precise and unfaltering. The weight of the words, the moment, it was as if nothing in the world mattered more than the task at hand. Not even Tom, not even the neighbors. The crowd gathered closer, the panic palpable in the air, their voices growing more frantic. "Somebody help, somebody has to go in. It's freezing cold in that river." But still none of them moved. Not a single person made an attempt to save Tom. No one else knew how to swim. Emma's eyes never strayed from the fabric in her hands. She didn't even react as Tom's thrashing grew weaker, his cries more distant. "Emma," Martha screamed, her voice breaking. "What is wrong with you? This is your husband. You can't just watch him die." Emma's lips curled slightly as she spoke, her voice low but resolute. "Martha," she said evenly, "didn't you tell me yesterday behind the hill that Tom was with Linda Green?" A sharp silence fell. The weight of the words settled on the crowd like a blanket. Martha's face paled. Her hands shook slightly as she looked away, unable to meet Emma's gaze. That's different," Martha stammered, her voice faltering. Emma's eyes were cold as she looked at the woman before her. "Oh, is it? Well, I think if Tom has the strength to roll around with another woman, then I'm sure he's got the strength to swim." She bent down again to resume her work, as though nothing had changed. The ripples in the river grew more pronounced, the water now calm where Tom had once struggled. His movements had ceased. A small group of people behind Emma gasped. Some had begun to murmur about getting the village chief, but Emma paid them no mind. She merely kept scrubbing. And then from behind her came the sound of hurried footsteps. Tom!" a voice cried out. Emma didn't need to turn around. She knew the voice all too well. It was Linda Green, her husband's mistress, running frantically toward the river's edge. She reached it just as the last signs of life from Tom were sinking beneath the surface. "Linda, don't," someone cried out, but she was already moving, about to throw herself into the water. Emma still didn't look. "Don't, Linda," someone yelled, pulling her back. "You can't swim either." Linda was in tears. She turned toward Emma, her eyes pleading. "Please, Emma, please save him. He's your husband." Emma finally looked up. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the village. The cool autumn air whispered through the trees. "Sister-in-law," Emma said, her voice icy. "Since you want to call me that, I'll give you some advice. If you love him so much, then it's your job to save him. It's not mine." Linda, her face flushed with humiliation, looked as though she were about to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She had no defense. "Don't misunderstand," she sobbed. "Tom and I didn't—" "Oh," Emma raised an eyebrow, her gaze piercing. "Then tell me, what were you two doing behind the hill last night, looking at the moon?" Linda's face flushed a deep shade of red. She lowered her head, unable to answer. And just like that, Tom, who had been struggling in the water only moments ago, sank beneath the surface, leaving only a few bubbles that rippled out in the quiet river. For a breath, the river turned still. The last bubbles widened, thinned, and disappeared. A chorus of whispers rose behind Emma, the kind that pricks at the back of your neck. She leaned over the basin and wrung out a shirt. Water hissed against the dry leaves at her feet. Footsteps thudded on the path. 2 farm hands splashed down the bank, stopped at the lip, and hesitated at the depth. Someone shouted to fetch a rope. Another cursed the cold. Martha called out names like she was counting lifeboats. A sudden splash, then the scrape of skin on stone. Head snapped to the opposite bank. Tom hauled himself up by a slick root boots, dragging jeans dark and dripping. He stayed on his hands and knees for a moment, coughing river water, then pushed to his feet and stood hunched in the reeds. The relief rolled through the crowd in a single sound, sharp and thin like air let out of a tire. Emma did not move. She took her time laying the shirt across the line. When she finally looked, she saw what she expected. Tom did not look like a man dragged down. He looked like a man who had timed a breath and chosen where to surface. He made a slow show of it, a hand to his thigh, a wince. He limped along the far side toward the bridge water pattering from his cuffs. When he reached the path and crossed toward them, Linda broke free and ran a few steps, then stopped when Martha caught her elbow. Tom came close enough for his eyes to find Emma. His hair was plastered to his forehead. A single leaf clung to his cheek like it did not want to let go. He swallowed. For a second, the noise of the town fell away and left only the river, a steady hush. "My leg cramped," he said like a line he had practiced voice hoarse. "Thought I was done for." Emma tipped her head and looked at his legs, at how he stood without favoring one side, at his shoulders square under the wet flannel. She let the moment stretch until he shifted. "You swam diagonally to the shallow bend," she said. "You always do." The word always landed with a soft, dull weight. Martha glanced between them. Linda's fingers twisted in the hem of her sweater. Tom tried for a laugh and missed. "I panicked. Anybody would." "Anybody who does not know this river," Emma said. He opened his mouth, closed it, then cast a quick look at Linda, a look that asked for a script and found none. Linda stepped forward, voice trembling. "Emma, please. He was scared. I was scared. We can talk inside." "You can talk anywhere you like," Emma said. "You already do." For a beat, no one spoke. Then someone barked that there was nothing to see after all. People began to drift. Boots scraped. The air filled again with the drag of the river and the rattle of dry grass. Emma gathered the last piece of laundry and lifted the basin to her hip. The plastic bit into her fingers. She walked past Tom without a glance and felt his gaze like a cold hand between her shoulder blades. At the porch, Martha caught up, voice low. "Emma, honey, you sure you want to go back there first?" "It is my house," Emma said. "I will make dinner." Martha watched her go and did not follow. Inside, the screen door clicked shut and cut off the noise from the street. The house smelled faintly of coffee gone bitter on the burner. A clock ticked somewhere in the living room like a small animal hiding in a wall. Emma set the basin in the sink and turned the tap. The pipes grumbled. In the doorway, a figure sat up straighter. Earl Miller, Tom's father, had taken root at the kitchen table hours earlier and had not moved. His cap sat beside the ashtray brim-frayed sweatband dark. He cupped a mug with both hands as if warmth could climb his arms and settle his heart there. "You are late," he said, and then his eyes found her face. "Where is Tom?" "He fell in the river," Emma said. The mug clacked against the table. "Christ almighty. And you are here? Why are you here?" "I do not swim." "So you called somebody." "The whole town showed," she said, rinsing the grit from her hands. They watched. "What do you mean, watched?" Emma did not answer. The water ran. It was only when Earl pushed back from the table that she turned. His face was ruddy and creased, the kind of face that had met a lot of weather and lost most times. "Is he dead?" he asked. "He should be," she said, and the words came out clean, like pulling a nail straight. The porch steps thumped. The screen door squealed. Tom stepped in water, dripping from his cuffs onto the mat, Linda hovering behind him, hair damp at the ends, eyes shining too bright. Earl's shoulders dropped half an inch, and all the air he had been holding left him in a hiss. Boy, he said, you foolish boy. Tom tried a smile that went nowhere. It was nothing he said. I slipped. Earl stared. You slipped in a river you know like your own hand. We do not need to make a thing of it, Tom said, but he was already glancing past his father to Emma, whose face did not change. Linda cleared her throat small and guilty. Mr. Miller, she said softly, I'm sorry about the scare. Earl looked at her as if he had not seen her there. Then his gaze dropped to the hollow of her throat. A bruise bloomed just above the collar of her sweater, a dark oval trying hard not to be seen. Earl's lips thinned. Emma dried her hands on a dish towel. She took a step closer to Linda, not unkind, only careful, as if she were looking at a stain that would not wash out. You missed one, she said, eyes on the mark. Linda's hand flew up too late. Tom's head jerked, then stilled. The light from the window pressed a long rectangle on the floorboards between them. That is not what you think, Tom said quickly. What is it then? Earl asked, voice gone tired, not loud. Mosquito season in October. Tom's mouth worked. No sound came. Linda stared at the floor. The house listened. Earl's chair scraped back. He stood and took one long step and then another, and for a second Emma thought he would strike his son. He did not. He gripped the back of the chair until his knuckles went pale. You have got a good wife, he said, and each word cost him. You come home smelling of the river and somebody else's perfume. You set the whole town to talking. You set me to thinking about the boy I raised, and I do not like where my mind goes. Tom flushed. Dad, do not do this here. Where else? Earl said. We got 3 rooms and no corners to hide in. Linda edged toward the door. I should go, she whispered. Stay, Emma said, not raising her voice. Hear it too. Tom turned to her then. Emma, he said, pleading, threaded in. I messed up. I know that. I can fix it. She took a breath and let it out slow. In the silence, the clock ticked. The river somewhere behind the trees beyond the back fence kept moving like a throat that had not yet swallowed. Fix what she asked. The water stunt. The late nights. The hickey on a girl's neck I did not put there. He rubbed his face with both hands, scraping water and shame in the same swipe. I was scared you did not care, he said, choosing a path where pity lived. I wanted to see if you still would. When you did not, I thought I would drown. You were never in danger, Emma said. Not of water. He flinched. A bead of river slid from his jaw and landed on the floor with a sound so small it felt loud. Earl sat again slow, as if his bones had aged in the last 10 minutes. He pinched the bridge of his nose, then looked at Emma. What do you want to do? He asked. He did not ask Tom. Emma folded the towel and set it beside the sink. She did not look at Linda. She did not look at the river man by the door, still damp, still searching for a place to stand that did not feel like she had placed it there. You choose, she said to Tom. You choose me and you cut her out. Clean. All of it. Today. Or you choose her and we go to the courthouse and sign. Linda lifted her head. Tom stared at the floor at the nail heads hammered flat by other hands. He did not speak. 3 days, Emma said after a pause, voice even. Not 4. Tom blinked. Emma, please. 3, she repeated. Because I will not live in a house that waits. The back door banged softly in a gust and then settled. The kitchen light buzzed a faint insect hum. No one moved. Linda slid another inch toward the porch. I did not mean to hurt anyone, she said half to the air. You meant to be chosen, Emma said. She turned to the stove and reached for the matches. The flick was bright. Flame caught small and steady under the kettle. The room filled with the tin smell of struck phosphorus. Earl's eyes shone wet in the corners. He stared at his hands and seemed to be counting the things he could hold and the things he could not. Tom shifted. I need time, he said, empty voice like he was reading off a form. You have time, Emma said. You have 3 days of it. Outside, a truck rolled past gravel, muttering under tires, then faded. Somewhere a dog barked once and quit. The river kept its own counsel. Martha's voice floated through the screen from the yard, careful and bright, the way people talk in a room where glass lies underfoot. Emma, she called. You got company at the gate. Emma crossed to the door and hooked the screen with 2 fingers. The yard lay in a flat wash of late light. Dust gnats swirled above the grass. At the gate stood Sheriff Carter, hat in his hands, his cruiser angled along the ditch. His boots were muddy to the laces. Afternoon, he said, eyes moving past Emma into the kitchen, taking stock. Earl, Tom. His gaze snagged on Linda and flicked away. We had a call. Earl tipped his chin. A call about what? About folks seen last night up by the old pump house, Carter said, steady voice. Teenagers thought they heard a fox. Turned out to be people. Names came up. No one breathed for a second. The kettle on the stove began to whisper. Tom shifted. That has nothing to do with you. Carter looked at him, not hostile, only tired. Everything is something to do with me when it starts fights, or folks get to drowning in the river for show. I am not here to write a ticket. I am here to ask if this house is going to stay quiet tonight. It will, Emma said. Carter nodded once as if that answer had weight. He set his hat back on his head. All right, then. He turned, put a hand to the gate latch, then paused. Ms. Brooks, he said softer. If you want me to come by later, you make a call. He did not look at Tom when he said it. The cruiser rolled away gravel, popping under tires. The sound trailed off down River Road and left the yard still again. Linda backed toward the porch. I'm sorry, she said to Earl to the room to anyone who would take it. I should not have come. You already did, Emma said. Might as well see it through. Linda swallowed. Her eyes met Emma's for a beat. Whatever she hoped to find there, it was not there. She slid out the door and went down the steps quick and quiet. Earl rubbed a hand over his face. His breath left him in a long exhale. I am going to the field, he said, not to anyone in particular. I got rows that do not argue back. He picked up his cap and let himself out. The house shrank a little when he was gone. Tom stood dripping on the mat, turning his ring with his thumb. Emma shut the screen and locked it. She lifted the kettle and poured. Steam curled around her wrist like a ghost. You gave me 3 days, Tom said. I did. I just need to think. You have already been thinking, Emma said. This is not a hard question. It is only an ugly one. He let out a small, bitter breath. You make it sound easy. It is not easy, she said. It is plain. He looked at the floorboards as if they held a map. Emma, we have years. That should count. It does, she said. It counts as proof of what we are and what we are not. The clock ticked. A drop fell from his sleeve and made a dark spot on the mat. Another, then another, until a small shape grew there, like a lake too new to have a name. He tried again. We could start over. With what she asked. With lies chewed soft so they go down easier. He winced. His chest rose and fell shallow. He moved to the table and sat where Earl had sat, hands flat on the wood like he was feeling for something under it. Do you hate me? He asked, not looking up. Hate is work, Emma said. I do not have time for it. He shut his eyes. When he opened them, they were dry. I do not know how to get back to you. You do not, she said. You choose. He stared at his hands. The ring was a dull circle against wet skin. He took it off and set it on the table. It rolled, wobbled, and settled with the sound of a coin losing an argument. 3 days, he said again, as if the echo might buy something. Emma said nothing. He stood then slow, as if the room had thickened. He reached for the ring, changed his mind, and left it. He walked out. The door clicked. The house took a breath. That night the bed stayed smooth on his side. A moth banged itself flat against the porch bulb. A train moaned somewhere far off the sound, long and low enough to pull at the ribs. Emma washed the last plate and set it upside down. She sat at the table with the lights off and let her eyes adjust until the kitchen was a soft version of itself. In the morning, Martha knocked and stepped in with a covered dish and too much sympathy set on her face. I heard things, she said, not asking where the hearing had been done. Eat while it is hot. Thank you, Emma said. She did not lift the lid. By noon, word had traveled the length of Willow Creek and back again. Earl returned boots dusted white from the road and stood inside the door like a man not sure he was welcome in his own life. He did not come home, he said, voice quiet. I know, Emma said. You are a good woman, Earl said. I do not say that because it is the kind thing. I say it because it is the true thing. Emma poured him coffee. He wrapped both hands around the mug. What are you going to do? He asked and caught himself, shame quick in his eyes. I am sorry. That is yours. It is, she said. She set a folded paper on the table. He did not touch it. He could see the heading from where he sat, County District Court, petition for dissolution of marriage. You already been, he said. I filled out what I could, Emma said. Signatures need to happen in person. Earl nodded like a man at a funeral who knows the right words and cannot reach them. The screen door creaked. Tom stood there, hair dry now, jaw-shaved eyes, that same unsettled gray as the river when a cloud passes over it. He saw the paper. He did not see anything else for a beat. Emma, he said. Sit, she said. He sat. He did not look at Earl. He did not look at his own ring, emptying the space on his finger. He looked at Emma and tried to find a version of her that might meet him halfway. The room offered only the one present. You asked me to choose, he said, and his voice stayed level for the first time in a day. I do not think there is any love left the way it is supposed to be. Earl's jaw worked. He did not speak. Then we are done, Emma said. Tom closed his eyes, opened them, and nodded. The nod was small. It was also real. They drove into town without talking. The courthouse sat on the square like something that had always been there, brick, sunburned white columns smudged by weather and years. A school group crossed the sidewalk in a line, each kid holding a rope loop, a teacher counting under her breath. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. A fan turned overhead with a steady click. At the clerk's window, a woman in a navy cardigan slid forms through the slot and pointed to lines without commentary. "Need your IDs," she said. "Middle initials. Dates. If you have any shared property, we will need an attachment." She chewed her gum softly, eyes kind, without being anything else. Tom fumbled his wallet. Emma did not. They stood shoulder to shoulder at the counter and read words written to fit all kinds of hurts. Emma wrote carefully, her letters even. Tom's hand shook on the second page and steadied on the third. When they were done, the clerk gathered the stack and squared the edges on the glass. She adjusted her glasses, drew a stamp from a dish, and inked it. "You understand the filing starts a process," she said, not unkind. "This is the start." Emma nodded once. The clerk pressed the stamp. The rubber met paper with a soft thud. The blue seal bloomed and left a wet shine that caught the ceiling fan light. Behind them, someone opened the courthouse door. Cold air rolled over their backs and carried in the thin murmur of the square. Emma let her palm rest on the counter for a second, feeling the cool, slick glass under her skin. Tom breathed in, held it, and did not know what to do with it. The clerk slid a copy through the slot. "Take this," she said. Emma reached. The paper was warm from the machine. The seal was still damp. She lifted it by the corner so the ink would not smear. Outside the clerk's window, the square carried on like any weekday. Trucks eased past the feed store. A dog lay on its side in a wedge of sun. Emma folded the stamped copy and slid it into her bag. Tom watched her hand as if the paper might burn through. On the courthouse steps, a knot of neighbors looked up, heads tipped together. Martha stood at the bottom with a grocery sack hugged to her chest. "Emma," she said, careful. "You two all right?" "We filed," Emma said. Martha's eyes softened and sharpened at once. Someone behind her clicked their tongue. Tom's shoulders pulled in. He went for the car without speaking. Emma followed. The ride home held the same air as a church after the hymn has ended. The road unspooled through cottonwoods. The river flashed through the trees like a piece of glass. At the house, the yard was already full. A line of women in sun hats stood near the fence, their voices low, hands restless. Men stuck to the shade, eyes on their boots. Earl came from the barn, face set. He stopped at the steps and looked first at Emma, then at Tom. "You did it," he said. Tom nodded once. Earl's jaw moved like he was chewing on words that would not break down. Then his hand came up fast. The crack of palm on cheek snapped the yard quiet. Tom staggered a half step, then steadied with a hand on the doorframe. He did not lift his eyes. "You throw a good thing in a ditch and then act surprised when you cannot haul it back," Earl said. He was not shouting. The quiet hurt more. Emma set her bag on the table inside and put water on. The kettle sat small and bright on the gas. Through the screen, she saw Linda on the sidewalk. Linda stayed there, not coming in, fingers white around her purse strap. When their eyes met, Linda looked away. Emma ladled soup into bowls and carried 2 to the porch. "Eat," she said. Martha took a bowl because saying no felt wrong. Earl took one because his hands needed something to hold. Tom stood in the doorway like a man mistaken for a guest at his own address. "Emma," he said. "Sit," she said, and he sat on the top step, knees, wide palms on thighs. His cheek held the mark of his father's hand. The red was already fading into a dull heat. Neighbors drifted off in 2s and 3s. When the yard thinned, Linda stepped closer. "I am sorry," she said, voice thin. Earl did not look at her. Tom looked at the floorboards. Emma gathered spoons in her palm. Metal clicked lightly. "Take your sorry to the place that needs it," she said, not unkind and not kind. Linda blinked hard and backed away. The screen door breathed with the afternoon breeze. Somewhere a bee pushed itself against the porch light, as if the bulb held a way out. Inside, Emma packed. The suitcase had a dry hiss when she pulled the zipper. She folded shirts with the care she would give to a new bruise. A framed photo lay face down on the dresser, the felt back scuffed at the edges. She lifted it, looked once at a younger pair standing in this same yard in new clothes, set it back down, and did not take it. A drawer stuck and then gave with a hollow pop. At the bottom lay a handful of receipts and one dried leaf that had ridden in on someone's boot and never found its way back outside. She tossed the receipts and left the leaf where it lay. In the kitchen, Earl stood with his cap in his hands. "You heading out now?" he asked. "In the morning," Emma said. He nodded, then shook his head. "I do not want you to go." "It is not your fault," she said. "I know it is not," he said. "I just do not want it." She took an envelope from the counter and pressed it into his palm. He tried to give it back, and she closed his fingers over it. The skin of his hand was dry and warm. He looked at their hands, and his eyes went bright. He cleared his throat and looked at the door instead. On the porch, Tom watched the light shift in the yard like he wanted to memorize how late afternoon fell on this particular patch of grass. "Do you hate me?" he asked when she came out. "No," Emma said. "Hate takes more time than I have." "Can you forgive me?" he said. "It is not a courtroom," she said. "There is no verdict that will fix it." He studied her face as if the answer might be hiding in a crease he had not seen before. His mouth opened and closed. He did not find it. She lifted the suitcase and set it by the door. Night came on quick once the sun slid behind the mill. The house settled around them with its usual small noises. Emma lay awake and listened to the train moan across the far fields. When sleep came, it came in short, light pieces. Dawn peeled the yard into pale color. Birds chattered in the hedge like they had not heard about human matters. Emma drank coffee that had been on the burner too long, and did not mind the bitterness. Earl waited by the gate cap on coat collar, turned up against a chill that did not need it. His eyes were swollen from a short night. "You sure?" he said. Emma lifted the suitcase. "I am." He walked with her to the road, then stopped at the ditch. "Right if you think on it," he said, then seemed to hear himself and winced. "I mean, just right." "I will," she said. A pair of headlights eased over the rise. The county bus rattled to a stop in a puff of dust. The doors folded open with a sigh. Emma turned. Tom stood at the corner of the yard, hair mussed, face unshaved, breath visible in the cool. He had no coat. He had not planned for weather. "Emma," he called. The word carried clean in the morning air. She watched him walk to the edge of the gravel and stop like there was a line painted there that he could not cross. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too," she said. He swallowed. "Do you want me to come see you? Later." "No," she said. "Do not come." He nodded small. The nod seemed to cost him. He did not move aside. The driver cleared his throat. Emma climbed the steps and found a seat by the window. She set the suitcase upright and folded her hands on top. The divorce paper lay flat on her lap. The blue seal had dried. Through the glass, Tom looked like a photograph already curling at the corners. Earl stood behind him, with one palm lifted in a half-wave he could not finish. Martha had come to the end of her walk and was pretending to tie a shoelace. The bus shuddered. Emma felt the vibration climb into the seat and through her spine. The town slid backward. The river cut a dark line beyond the trees. On the next corner, a figure ran breath-smoking boots loud on the pavement. Someone shouted her name. The driver checked his mirror and kept going. Emma did not turn. She kept her eyes on her hands until the sound of the steps fell away and left only the engine and the long road out. The bus let her off in the county seat with a puff of warm diesel air. The station was a low brick box with a soda machine humming in the corner. Emma stepped into light that felt flatter than Willow Creek's, like a sheet of white paper. A clock on a pole read 9:10. A man with a broom pushed dust in slow circles. She found a room above a laundromat by the tracks. The fan in the window knocked against its frame when the wind shifted. At night, the freight came through and shook the glass a long iron breath that rose and fell until it let the street sleep again. The first morning she woke to the mingled smells of starch and coffee and warm cotton, and the thrum of machines turning other people's clothes clean. She walked to the county supply on Main and asked if they needed help. Mr. Dalton's sleeves rolled pencil behind one ear, looked up from a ledger that had turned gray at the corners. He asked 2 questions and slid a stool across the counter. "Can you keep neat lines?" he said, tapping the columns. "Yes," Emma said. "Then sit," he said. "We will see." The work carried a quiet rhythm that settled in her bones. Weights of nails invoices for seed and order of fence boards, with a delivery note stuck on crooked. She straightened the note, and it felt like placing a button back where it belonged. At noon she ate a sandwich by the back door and watched a sparrow pull threads from a torn feed sack and ferry them to a roof somewhere. That evening, when she turned the corner to her stairs, she saw a figure in the shadow of the laundromat awning. Tom stepped forward, hands open at his sides. "Emma," he said. She stopped 2 paces away. The spin of a dryer thumped behind the glass, steady as a heart. "You came all this way," she said. "I wanted to talk." "You did that at the house," she said. "It did not change the paper." He took a breath. "I am sorry, I mean it." She nodded once. "I heard you." He glanced up at her window like he wanted to measure the distance. "Can we go somewhere and sit?" "No," she said. "Can I call you?" "No." His shoulders sagged. The light over the laundromat door buzzed. A moth tried the bulb and tried it again. "I do not know where to put the thought of you not being there," he said. "That is your work," she said. His jaw worked. For a moment he looked young in a way that made something in her chest pull tight and then release. He stepped closer and stopped. "Do not come back," she said. He nodded. The nod had the weight of something let go and something not. When he was gone, she climbed the stairs. The room smelled like hot metal. She filled the kettle and waited. When it sang, she poured and set the cup on the sill to steam the glass. In the morning, Sheriff Carter tipped his hat from the doorway of the store. "He in town?" he asked. "He was," Emma said. "You want me to put words to him?" Carter asked. "I want quiet," she said. "You will have it," he said. "I will see to that." He did. Tom did not come back to the stairs or the awning or the corner by the diner where the windows threw a square of yellow onto the sidewalk like a welcome that would take anyone. Word traveled the sheriff had talked to him by the river pullout and left him staring at the water, as if it had promised him something, and then changed its mind. Days gathered themselves into weeks. At the supply, Mr. Dalton brought out a metal cash box with a jammed lock and told her to make it right. She sat with a bent paper clip and 2 small screwdrivers and coaxed the old mechanism to click. When the lid opened, he laughed a short sound of real relief and put a hand to his chest as if the box had held his pulse. "You have a head for this," he said. "That is what it feels like," Emma said. The next afternoon, a woman in a pale coat waited by the counter fingers worrying the seam of her sleeve. When Emma looked up, Linda lifted her chin. "Can we talk?" Linda asked. Emma wiped a pen tip and set it down. "All right." They stepped outside. The street smelled like rain on warm pavement, though the sky held back. Trucks rolled by light bouncing off their hoods. "We are done," Linda said, quick as if it might sting less if the words passed fast. "He says he wants you back." Emma looked at her face, at the brittle hope trying to hold shape there. "I am not a last place to tie up after a rough day," she said. Linda nodded a jerk of the head like she had expected it. Her eyes filled anyway. She pressed her lips together and kept the tears in place. "I thought I had a story," Linda said, voice small. "We all do," Emma said. "Then it meets the air." Linda let out a breath she did not seem to know she was holding. "I am sorry," she said, and this time it did not run thin. It landed. "Do better with the next story," Emma said. Linda gave a small sound that might have been a laugh. She put her hands in her pockets and walked away without looking back. Late that week, the phone on the office wall rang, and Mr. Dalton covered the receiver and said it was for Emma. Earl's voice came through scratchy from a line that had too many knots in it. "Mary," he said, and then caught himself. "Emma, you all right?" "I am," she said. "I do not want anything," he said. "I was only thinking. The envelope." "You keep it," she said. "I did not call for that," he said, quick. "I called to hear you sound like yourself. You do." "How was the field?" she asked. "Still needs a man with a back," he said. "Mine is old, but it goes." There were 3 beats where both of them listened to their own breath. "He gets in trouble, I will handle it," Earl said. "I know," Emma said. "Thank you for calling." "You take care of your days," he said. After the call, she stood by the back door and watched rain gather in the low places. The river here was a thin brown ribbon seen only from the overpass, but she felt it in the air. The same water, different bend. On a Friday, the director of the county finance office stopped in to pick up purchase orders. He watched Emma balance a stack of receipts with her thumb and flick them into perfect order, then asked her 2 questions about columns and reconciliations. By the time he left, there was a note in her pocket with an address and a start time for a night class 2 blocks from the courthouse. "Come if you like," he had said. "It is numbers and rules and why the rules matter." That night, Emma pushed open a classroom door that smelled like chalk and floor wax. A handful of people sat with notebooks, heads bent. A man with wire-rimmed glasses wrote an equation on the board and turned with a patient look. "Evening," he said. She took a seat and laid her pencil flat on the desk. The first problem woke up a part of her mind that had been sleeping on a couch and had now stood stretched and found that the room fit. She walked home under a sky so clear the stars seemed hung on something close. When she reached her building, Sheriff Carter stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, and the laundromat owner talked with hands that cut the air. "We are putting a light over the stairs," Carter said. "No harm in seeing where your feet go." "Thank you," Emma said. Winter pressed its face to the glass and fogged it. The radiator in her room clanked and then got to work. She brought home a second-hand kettle with a dent near the spout and a chipped blue rim. When it sang, the sound settled something inside her. One afternoon, a thin letter waited in her mailbox with the county seal ghosted in the corner. Mr. Dalton leaned in the doorway while she opened it. The page inside named a training a stipend, date set in neat lines, a stamp at the bottom, in the same calm blue as the one at the courthouse. "You going to take it?" he asked. She ran a thumb over the seal. The paper was warm from her hand. "Yes," she said. He grinned with half his mouth. "Then we will find a way to cover your hours." That evening, Emma packed a small case. She folded what she needed and left what she did not. The photo on the dresser stayed face down. She set the case by the door and turned off the light. At dawn, the train shouldered into the station. Steam curled low over the platform. She climbed aboard and found a window seat. The car smelled like wool and old leather. A boy across the aisle pressed his face to the glass and drew a smiling sun in the fog with one finger. When the wheels started their slow grind to fast metal, the building slipped away. The laundromat shrank to a square with a blue door. The overpass lifted, and for a moment the river ran steel bright under the tracks. She watched it cut its patient path. She folded the letter back into its envelope and held it on her knees. The paper warmed through. The kettle at the car's end hissed on a coal stove and sang. The sound carried down the aisle and found her. She closed her eyes and let it be what it was. The train kept time, and the land unrolled, and her hands rested open in her lap. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.